Speak Out, 2nd edition, Advanced, Class CD, by Antonia Clare and J. Wilson, published by Pearson. Copyright Pearson Education Limited, 2016. Lead-in. Recording 1. 1.
Fierce. Seek. Hear.
2.
Bought. House. Cow.
3.
Sail. Blame. Aware.
4.
Calm. Bear. Heart.
Lead-in. Recording 2. 1.
Badge.
2.
Thistle.
3.
Off.
4.
Vision.
5.
Rice.
6.
Pig.
Unit 1. Origins. Recording 1. 1.
John's not in the office. He might be having lunch.
2.
I'm fed up. We've been waiting for an hour.
3.
She owns a small house by the river.
4.
Can you be quiet? I'm trying to work.
5.
The letter arrived today. She'd been expecting the news since Monday.
6.
That chicken dish tasted great.
7.
Who do these keys belong to?
8.
By next September, we'll have been living here for 25 years.
9.
I'm working on a project at the moment.
10.
My partner was making dinner when I got home, so I helped.
Unit 1. Recording 2.
We've been waiting for an hour. She'd been expecting the news. We'll have been living here for 25 years. My partner was making dinner.
Unit 1. Recording 3. 1.
He'll spend hours on the computer.
2.
They would complain all the time.
3.
She'll disagree with everything you say.
Unit 1. Recording 4. 1.
He'll spend hours on the computer.
2.
He will spend hours on the computer.
3.
They would complain all the time.
4.
They would complain all the time.
5.
She'll disagree with everything you say.
6.
She will disagree with everything you say.
Unit 1. Recording 5. 1.
She'll arrive late.
2.
My mother will worry about everything.
3.
He would say that.
4.
They will play their music loudly.
Unit 1. Recording 6.
And looking at your personal preferences.
For any of you who work surrounded by other people, you'll know that one of the biggest stresses in the world of work is not the work itself, it's the people we work with. There are the people who need to be noisy when you're trying to be quiet. There are the ones who shush you when you're telling a really good story. There are the sweeping generalizers and the detail-obsessed nitpickers, the obsessive planners, and the last-minute deadline junkies. You, of course, are perfect. These days there are tests for just about everything, and personality is no exception. If you've ever been intrigued to define your type, or sat down and completed a questionnaire at work, then it's likely you'll have come across the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, known to its fans as the MBTI. Myers-Briggs is the world's most widely used personality questionnaire. From Beijing to Boston to Bournemouth, office workers, college students, and people who are simply curious to find out more about themselves answer a series of questions to determine which of 16 different personality types they fall into.
How did you find completing the questionnaire that you completed just yesterday, I think?
I found it not particularly challenging. Maybe I didn't think about it as much as one ought to. The preferences are split into 4 sections, so prepare yourself for the psychological bit. The first category determines whether you are an extrovert or an introvert. The second tells you whether you prefer to sense or intuit information. The third deals with decision-making, thinking or feeling. And the fourth, our approach to actions, judging and perceiving. Ultimately, you end up with a 4-letter acronym, like ENFP or ISFJ, which describes your personality type.
How do you prefer to, if you like, recharge your batteries at the end of a tiring day?
Well, most of the time, I prefer to go home and be quiet and read or slow down, put my children to bed and so on.
Typically, when we ask people this sort of question, typically introverts are more likely to talk about spending quiet time on their own, reading, etc. Extroverts are more likely to talk about spending time with people. I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to put together any flat pack furniture or anything like that. How did you go about doing it?
Well, I'd lose the screws and then the directions would be underneath the box and then I'd lose another part of it and it would take quite a long time and be quite an infuriating process.
Okay. Typically, when we ask that question, people with a preference for sensing will like to follow the instructions. People who have a preference for intuition, it's not that they disregard instructions, but they're a little bit more of a guide rather than something out there. If you imagine perhaps a friend of yours gives you a call and says, "I've just been burgled," what would your reaction be? What would you do?
It's so difficult because I think it depends on the person.
Okay. And to some matter, it's a matter of what you do first, because both people with preference for thinking and both people with preference for feeling will do both things. They'll do the practical things. Have you called the police? Is the person still there? Have you called the insurance, etc., etc.? And they'll then go on to, and how are you?
Well, in that instance, I would definitely fall into the thinking category, I think.
How do you go about doing your food shopping?
I'm in love with internet food ordering. So I do that, and then all the things that I've forgotten, because I don't do it with any great system, I spend the rest of the week running out and picking up.
Okay. Typically, people with a preference for judging will be quite organised about those sorts of things. People with a preference for perceiving may also make lists, but those lists have a more aspirational quality.
Random feel, shall we say?
Yeah.
That would be my list.
There are things that they might buy or they might not buy. And if there's something more interesting when they get to the supermarket, we'll get that instead.
At the end of my conversation with John, I got my personality type, which I'll illuminate you on later.
Unit 1. Recording 7.
So, looking at this photo of the girl in the blue apron, I'd say she's around 30 years old.
Yeah, she looks nice, actually.
I reckon maybe mid-30s.
Oh, really?
Or something like that, yeah.
If I had to make a guess, I'd say actually 32.
wouldn't say she's that old.
There's something about her, isn't there?
Yes.
She looks friendly.
Well, there's something in her eyes, actually, that makes me think she's about to laugh or something.
Have you noticed her apron's got some sort of white marks on it?
Yeah.
Kind of,
Well, she's obviously been baking bread, hasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
she looks quite serene, though.
She does, yeah. She looks like you'd get on with her.
Yes, I suppose you would, yeah.
What about where she's working? What would you say?
Wow.
That's bread, isn't it? Oh, is it bread?
I think it's...
Is it cheese in the background?
I think that's bread.
Okay.
It could be a bakery. As
Yeah,
you know, there's
definitely.
like bread and stuff in the background.
Yeah, she's got a bit of flour down her as well.
Yeah, yeah she
So
must have been.
She
One
could
of
be a
those posh
baker.
delis, don't you think?
Probably. Shall we go to the next
Yes.
photograph? Have you got
Well,
this lady,
the
older
older
lady?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, got her.
There she is.
What do we think
Wow.
about her?
Oh, she looks very dignified, doesn't she?
Definitely. She
Mm.
looks, I would say, she looks intellectual. Maybe that's because of her age, but
Yeah.
something about her
Yes.
face that just makes me think she's seen a lot.
Yeah, she gives the impression of being very intellectual.
I might suggest she's a lecturer in a university or
Yeah.
something really brainy like that.
But it seems to me she's very pretty as well. So
She is, yeah.
could have been a model or anything like that.
Oh, do you
really.
think?
Well, the outfit's quite sort of snazzy, isn't it? You know, she could have been something like that in her heyday.
She looks, well, she's done her makeup nicely, hasn't she?
And that necklace
So-
might suggest that she has got something to do with fashion.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
what's the...
This young guy?
He looks happy.
He looks pretty cool, actually.
Big smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice bright T-shirt.
I wonder what his job is.
I'm pretty sure he's a creative of some sort.
I'd hazard a guess it's something to do with computers because he's surrounded with them. So maybe graphic design.
There's something about
cool.
him that says sort of creative, doesn't it? You know, with
Yeah,
the bags around.
What do you think about all those bags in the background?
Oh, yeah, I hadn't noticed
I
those.
wonder
It might
what those are
suggest
for.
that he designs the bags, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he's like a creative or something, or marketing or something that involves computers, like you said.
What's that in the window, like through the back? It looks like a load of bikes. Is
It makes me think he's in a gym, which is really strange,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
It doesn't look...
Maybe he's the receptionist at a gym. No.
I'm pretty
What, with
sure.
bags up everywhere and computers?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty
don't
sure
know
it's quite a
then.
laugh, though. He looks like a laugh, doesn't he?
What about how old would you put him?
I'd hazard a guess he's about 20-something.
Oh,
do you think
definitely
he's older?
Yeah, I
He's
reckon
a bit
he's about
older.
40-ish.
No way, really?
Do you think? I do like his hair. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. He just looks kind of happy.
Unit 1. Recording 8. 1.
I'll be there soon. I just have a couple of things to do.
2.
Why don't we meet at about 8ish?
3.
I left a lot of stuff at the hotel, but I can pick it up later.
4.
Don't worry, we've got plenty of time.
5.
We've sort of finished the accounts.
6.
There'll be about 40 or so people attending.
Unit 1. Recording 9. 1.
It looks as if he's got a lot of work to do.
2.
She looks about 50 or so.
3.
It's a bit dark, isn't it?
4.
I've got a couple of things to ask.
Unit 1. Recording 10.
My treasured possession is a very old carpet that has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandfather was a salesman. He sold carpets in Calcutta. During the 1950s, he went bankrupt and went to South Africa to find his fortune. Legend has it that he took nothing but the clothes he was wearing and this carpet. I'm not sure this is true, but that's the story. Anyway, he made his fortune in South Africa and the carpet remained in the family. When he died, my grandmother inherited it, and instead of putting it on the floor of her house in Durban, she hung it on the wall. Even as a young child, I remember it. It's brightly coloured, red, white, green and gold, with these beautiful patterns that look like leaves. And I just remember it hanging on the wall of the dining room and always wondering why a carpet was on the wall. Anyway, eventually it was bequeathed to me, and it's now on my wall. It's a little bit old and frayed now. I suppose I should repair it. Some of the weaving is falling apart, but it still looks okay. When I die, my children will have it, and then their children. So it will always be in the family.
Unit 2. Opinion. Recording 1.
He would have. He'd have helped her. Wouldn't have. This conference wouldn't have happened. We would have. We'd have seen the sunrise. I would have. I'd have come sooner.
Unit 2, Recording 2.
Now, you might think of a library as a dusty old place full of books that nobody uses anymore. But in a living library, the books are real people. People who can share a significant personal experience or a particular perspective on life. Today, we've got two people here to tell us about their living book experiences. Alex Fuller, who was a book at his Living Library event in Sheffield, and Saba Chaturanga, who was a reader at an event in Norwich. First of all, Alex, hi.
Hello.
Alex, can you tell us a little bit about the experience? What kind of book were you and what was it like?
Well, the event was organised by the university and was meant to tackle prejudices. I arrived in a bit of a hurry and quickly checked through the catalogue to see what kind of books were available and to sign myself in as a student.
A student, OK. And what sort of prejudices were you expecting?
I wasn't sure what to expect, really, but when you read the catalogue, against each book, there are a few of the typical prejudices and preconceptions that people might associate with your title. So next to student, people had written things like lazy, politically apathetic, do useless degrees, and also waste taxpayers' money, can't cook, and spends all his money on beer. Well, thinking back to the previous night, I wasn't sure how I was going to tackle any of those accusations.
I see. So what did you do?
First we just had to go and sit in the waiting room, and I was beginning to have second thoughts, to be honest. I was quite uneasy about it all, but anyway, then the public started coming in. It was like sitting on a shelf, waiting and hoping that someone would choose you, and hoping that you would be able to find something to say when they did.
Right, and presumably someone did choose you?
An older man with grey hair and a suit came to collect me.
Oh.
And as we were walking over to our corner, I was planning my responses to the expected accusations. But in fact, as we started talking over coffee, we compared our experiences. You know, student life in the 1960s with its riots and protests, wild music and all the ambitions they had of changing the world, and student life now.
OK, and what did you discover? Anything interesting?
Actually, we found that we shared a lot of the same ideologies and that many things haven't really changed.
Ah. Well, that's interesting. So, do you think there was any point in the session? Did it change your opinions at all?
I think the directness of the experience was eye-opening, really. It forces you to have a very candid discussion, so people have to keep an open mind about things, and that has to be good.
Thank you. And Saba, how was your experience? Was it similar? Did you enjoy the living book experience?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I really enjoyed the experience. I went to a 3-hour session in Norwich and I was really surprised at how much I learnt. It gives you a chance to really talk to people who may be from a different religion or culture, people who you don't normally get to talk to in your everyday life.
Great. Well, so who did you talk to?
I met all kinds of people, some wonderful people. One of them was a lady called Carrie, a blind woman.
Oh.
Carrie is visually impaired, having lost her sight due to illness when she was a child. The first thing that struck me about Carrie is that she's fiercely independent. She doesn't like other people doing things for her, so you can imagine that can be a bit difficult.
Absolutely. So what did you learn from Carrie?
OK, her mission was to tackle the stigma that people attach to blind people, that they're helpless. So she wants to challenge the stereotype that just because a person can't see, they can't do anything for themselves.
And how does she do that?
Well, Carrie lives a perfectly normal life. She goes to work, goes out socially, and does all the things that the rest of us do. Well, she can't drive, but that was really one of her few limitations. She told me about other successful blind people around the world who have had a great impact on society. People who've been successfully employed or taken degrees, published books, even participated in Olympic events. These are the people that have been Carrie's inspiration.
That's wonderful. Tell me, did you ask Carrie about her other senses? You know, people often say that people who are blind use their other senses because these are quite well developed.
That's right. Carrie feels that she's quite a good judge of character because she's able to see people for who they really are on the inside, rather than just how they want to present themselves, or how you may judge them because of the clothes they're wearing. As she put it, she's able to see with her heart rather than her eyes.
OK, how interesting. So, did the conversation change your views on disability?
Yes, it did, definitely. My conversation with Carrie gave me a whole new perspective. It taught me not to be narrow-minded about disability, and I thank her for that.
Unit 2, Recording 3. 1.
Perspective.
2.
Have second thoughts.
3.
Stereotypes.
4.
Preconceptions.
5.
Eye-opening.
6.
Convincing.
7.
Narrow-minded.
Unit 2, Recording 4.
As far as I'm concerned, we cannot trust the news we read these days.
Why not?
Because journalists have an axe to grind.
Well, that's debatable.
I think it's very rare to get a truly impartial journalist. I don't think it's within human nature to be impartial. You side on one side or the other.
Why would a journalist want to be partial? Why would a journalist not want to be impartial? Surely that's the job of a journalist.
Oh, I don't know about that.
It's why?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying I think there are some journalists who cannot be trusted. They have an agenda. They aren't there to tell the truth. They're there to sell newspapers.
Yeah, it's a job. They're being paid, and and effectively they're the mouthpiece for whoever is paying them.
But isn't the job of a journalist to be rigorous? I mean, if somebody comes up with a piece of nonsense or just whatever, piece of received information they're spouting, isn't the job of a journalist to get to the bottom of that and say, what do you really mean by that? Have you got proof of it? What are your sources?
I mean, they're going
That's their job, surely.
Asking, where's the evidence for what you're saying? They're not just going to say, oh, you tell me every
sheep in Wales is blue, they're not going to go, oh, right, I'll just write down every sheep in Wales is blue. They're going to say, right, well, show me photographs, take me and show me these sheep.
But the bigger issue here, if you ask me, is that they're there to sell newspapers, and newspaper owners have political agendas.
Quite frankly, it's a business as well, isn't it?
Well,
it's a political business.
From what I can gather about the nature of the dispassionate idea of being a journalist, what a journalist is after is the truth. If that journalist then goes to work for a particular paper that's got a particular angle, a particular axe to grind, then certainly that journalist may err towards one side of the political spectrum or the other. But only a bit, I would say. I would say they're still after truth at its heart.
Exactly. Surely any journalist worth his or her salt is going to make the case for both sides. Anybody just arguing one side in a totally biased way is not going to be taken seriously.
Why are there so many libel trials then, if we can trust everything journalists write?
And from what I can gather, people, and journalists included, don't even know that they're biased, and they'll write, something trying to be impartial, and they won't realise that actually they have a slant on it. You can't help it.
Highly unlikely. I mean, they're not stupid people, are they?
I think some of them are. For some newspapers, the way they write is incredibly stupid.
Well, surely people being libelled are just people who didn't like what was said about them.
Do you think we could agree that the basic honesty of journalists is probably not to be questioned, but there are a few bad apples in the cart, and that there are journalists who give who are bad journalists, who are partisan and who are arguing a particular political slant, who give other journalists a bad name?
Well, I'd say there were a few bad carts rather than a few bad apples.
Unit 2, Recording 5. 1.
Journalists have an axe to grind.
What? That's debatable.
2.
Why would a journalist not want to be impartial?
Ooh, I don't know about that.
3.
Journalists don't even know that they're biased.
I find that highly unlikely.
Unit 2, Recording 6. 1.
I really don't know about that.
2.
I'm really not sure about that.
3.
That's highly debatable.
4.
I find that highly unlikely.
Unit 2, Recording 7.
OK, I'm going to talk about the influence of nature versus nurture. And I'd like to begin by stating that, as I see it, by far the strongest influence has to be nurture. The reason I think this is that I believe the way we're brought up will have a much stronger influence on how we behave than anything that's in our genes. I mean, some people will argue that our abilities are determined pretty much exclusively by our genes. So, if your father was a great scientist with a natural ability for mathematics, then there's a pretty good chance that you might inherit that same ability. Personally, I think it's ridiculous to suggest this. I think that when a parent has a particular strength or interest, or achieves something wonderful in a particular field, then the chances are that when they have children, they will try to instill in the children the same kind of interest. They will pass on their knowledge, their passion for the subject. They are quite likely to engage the child in activities related to that field, perhaps for quite a lot of the child's time. And it's as a result of this that the child may also develop strengths or abilities in the same field. I absolutely reject the idea that nature endows us with these inborn abilities. I mean, you can be born with the best natural musical ability in the universe, but if you don't practice the piano, then nothing will come of it. On the other hand, I think you can teach people to do just about anything, so long as you dedicate time and give the child the right kind of encouragement, or put them in the right situation. So, to conclude, I would have to argue that nurture plays a much stronger role in the development of who you are and the talents that you develop than nature does.
OK, thank you. And now let's open the discussion up and take questions from the floor. Does anyone have a question for one of the speakers?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question to the last speaker. I think it is quite obvious, if you look around you, that people often very much resemble their parents in terms of their physical appearance and even their characters. Why then do you not think that it is equally possible that a child will inherit its parents' ability or intelligence?
That's a good question, because yes, we can see that we do inherit physical characteristics from our parents. However, the point I'm trying to make is that we cannot rely on something we are assumed to be born with. For me, the influence of nurture is far stronger. I believe that everyone has the same potential. They just need to be given the right conditions to nurture and develop that potential. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Unit 3. Places. Recording 1. 1.
Cave houses.
2.
Fingerprint.
3.
Candy floss.
4.
Film set.
5.
Longtail boat.
6.
9-year-old girl.
Unit 3. Recording 2.
Where did this interest in homes come from? You obviously had your own, but then what?
Well, I trained as an architect, and as a young man I travelled an awful lot, and my two interests eventually connected. But I had a real awakening when I travelled in Africa and parts of Asia. In Indonesia, I saw these enormous tree houses built high in the sky, made with the wood from banyan trees, and it just took my breath away. These houses 50 feet in the air.
Why did they build them so high?
Well, it's a refuge from wild animals and mosquitoes, and also, in their culture, they believe in evil spirits, and these spirits are earthbound.
Oh.
So it's really for protection. You're safe if you're higher up.
And you've also written about houses on stilts in your book.
Yes. All along the Amazon rainforest, you can find fishermen living in these houses built on wooden stilts. I was fortunate enough to stay in a fishing community there for a month and see firsthand how it works, and it's pretty interesting.
And on the other side of the world, igloos too.
I stayed in an igloo in Greenland for 3 weeks.
And you survived to tell the tale.
I did. Actually, they're far more comfortable than they look. They're pretty cosy inside. The packed ice and snow acts as an insulator.
So if we take the average sort of westernised home, maybe bricks and cement, a bit of wood, how do they compare to so-called primitive dwellings without toilets and running water? That kind of thing. Is there any comparison?
Well, we have to understand what we mean by primitive housing. The original home was a cave, and when we talk about a caveman, we think of someone extremely primitive with no culture. But the funny thing is that caves are pretty good places to live. They're cool in the summer and warm in the winter. They give superb protection in that they'll never blow down in the wind, and in fact, they're well made for decoration.
In what sense?
Well, the so-called primitive caveman made paintings on the walls which survived thousands of years. And, you know, any place you find caves, whether it's France, Spain, the United States, China, people have lived in them and decorated them and adorned them with figurines and artwork. But we have to recognise that these houses are built in accordance with the habitat and the surroundings. You know, igloos keep out the cold and snow, and tree houses provide safety. Then there are yurts, which are portable houses made of a wooden frame and animal skins. You can carry them around with you. Well, a yurt is built so that the nomads in Central Asia can move as the season and the weather changes. So, you see, houses can be beautiful, but in most cultures, they're built to be purely functional above all.
Unit 3. Recording 3. 1.
Dreary. City. Really.
2,
gaudy, body, naughty.
3,
gloomy, footy, roomy.
4,
hockey, jokey, pokey.
5,
shady, ready, daily.
6,
berry, airy, ferry.
Unit 3, Recording 4.
Environment. Environmental. Regenerate. Regeneration. Drama. Dramatic. Clarify. Clarification. Object. Objective.
Unit 3, Recording 5.
Just to give you a bit of background information, Harrogate Council has announced the creation of cycle hubs as part of its cycling strategy for the next 5 years. Now, the aim of this project is to set up cycle hubs. What are hubs? Hubs are areas where innovative ideas for cycling can be piloted and where resources can be targeted to increase cycling. So, what we plan to do is to introduce these new hubs in the centre of Harrogate, located in areas with a high concentration of cyclists. This solution will help us to create a safer environment for the cyclist. Cycling is an incredibly efficient mode of transport. It's fast, it's environmentally friendly, and it's cheap, with, of course, the added bonus of keeping you fit. So, basically, what we're proposing to do is to get everybody around the table to discuss the merits and demerits of whether or not the idea of a cycling hub in the centre of Harrogate is a good or a bad idea, basically. So, does anyone have any questions?
Unit 3, Recording 6.
Canada has one of the highest standards of living in the world. And, long life expectancy. And it's one of the world's wealthiest nations, so it's really quite a nice place to live. And on the downside, I suppose there's, in a lot of areas, you have to deal with bad winter weather. So, not in all places, but in a lot of places, we get a lot of snow and really cold temperatures in the winter. And that can be quite difficult to deal with, although you do get used to it. I would describe Canada as geographically massive. I think it's kind of difficult to explain just how big the country is. It's the second largest country in the world, apart from Russia, or next to Russia. And yeah, so it's just really, really, really big and very, very diverse. Every province is different. And, to visit Canada, you really have to go far and go for a long time to really appreciate the vastness of the country. If I was making a documentary, I'd probably focus on things like, we're very, very lucky in Canada to have a huge range of fresh water, Great Lakes, rivers, everywhere, literally. We have 3 coasts, the Pacific coast, the Atlantic, and the Arctic, and we actually have the longest coastline in the world. So you get incredible diversity, everything from wildlife to bird life, and also diversity in climate. So, we have temperate rainforests, and we have deserts, we have Arctic prairies, we have volcanoes, mountains. Almost half of Canada is covered in forests. Some similarities between the United States and Canada that I can think of is that we both have a strong history and a long-standing history of Aboriginal peoples, and we share the longest border in the world.
Well, undoubtedly one of the best things about Argentina is the values, people and their values, how they view life, and we tend to attribute quite a lot of sort of value to our family. We care a lot about our families and our gatherings, and we kind of gather on Sundays and we have a big barbecue and everybody comes and we all talk about our weeks and what we've been up to, and it's a good chance to catch up. We also care a great deal about our friends. We celebrate Friends Day, which is a big celebration, and we have a lot of fun and we give each other cards and thank each other for our friendship. So I think that's kind of the best thing about Argentina. People are very warm, very caring, and we've got a great sense of solidarity. I guess if a lot of people think that Latin America is just Latin America and that all countries are the same, and like Brazil and Argentina are the same thing, but we're very different. We've got, like, I guess if you could put it in 2 words, Brazilians are very upbeat and very happy, and Argentinians we've got a sense of longing for the old world and this melancholic view of the world, and so the outlooks are very different, and hence the culture is very different. An interesting way of seeing Argentina would be, if you were to film a documentary, it would be through following one person, like through a day or through a couple of days, because then you start getting a sense for all the things that go on in the country. And like, for instance, when I used to teach, it was like I used to start my day not knowing what my day would be about, because there's always a strike, there's always a picket line, there's always all these difficulties you have to overcome throughout a day. But at the same time, you can see how resourceful people are when dealing with difficulties, and how relaxed and laid back they are about them in a way. So it's an interesting way of living. It's a constant struggle, but at the same time, keeping your smile.
Unit 4. Justice. Recording 1.
The film is based on the true story of Manny Ballesteros, an honest, hard-working musician who is unjustly accused of armed robbery when he goes to an insurance firm to borrow some money. And employees mistake him for the armed robber who had robbed them the year before. In classic Hitchcock form, Ballesteros vehemently protests his innocence, but unfortunately he acts guiltily, leading a host of policemen and witnesses to identify him as the thief. The trial goes badly for Manny, but things are even worse for his wife, Rose, who struggles to cope with the strain of his ordeal.
Unit 4, Recording 2.
Dr. Richard Kimball, a well-known Chicago surgeon, returns home one night to find that his wife has been viciously murdered in their own home. When police find Kimball at the scene of the crime, he is arrested and later charged and convicted of his wife's brutal murder. However, on the way to the prison, a failed escape attempt by other prisoners gives Kimball his chance of freedom. While on the run from U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard, Kimball's only hope of proving his innocence and clearing his name is to find out for himself who was responsible for his wife's death, and to lead the team of detectives on his trail to the real perpetrator.
Unit 4, Recording 3. 1.
Civil liberties.
2.
Human rights.
3.
Free trade.
4.
Freedom of speech.
5.
Religious freedom.
6.
Illegal immigration.
7.
Intellectual property.
8.
Gun control.
9.
Environmental awareness.
10.
Capital punishment.
11.
Economic development.
12.
Child labour.
Unit 4, Recording 4. Speaker 1.
I really admire Malala Yousafzai. Her story is astonishing. She was a BBC blogger at the age of 11, and in that role, she revealed the state of schooling for girls in Pakistan. Basically, girls were being prevented from getting an education, and she campaigned against this and shed light on what was going on in the country. And of course, this got her into all sorts of trouble with the Taliban. And a few years later, she was shot point blank in an assassination attempt. Miraculously, she survived. But for me, the amazing thing is that instead of being scared, she continued to advocate for children's rights. I think she spoke to the United Nations and various presidents. And of course, people with that kind of courage and determination are one in a million. And so a few years ago, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She was the youngest person ever to win it, at just 17 years old.
Speaker 2.
Rigoberta Menchú is my hero without a doubt. She's an extraordinary woman and someone I really look up to. She's an indigenous woman from a poor background in Guatemala, and she's fought for human rights all her life. Several members of her family were murdered when Rigoberta was still young, and she was exiled to Mexico for her own protection. But the interesting thing is, this didn't deter her at all. She just carried on campaigning against the human rights violations and the atrocities perpetrated by the military. So, obviously, she's a very, very brave person. But I think what kind of propelled her into the world's consciousness was the book she published about her life, called I, Rigoberta Menchú. This kind of alerted people to the wider struggles and made her a household name, a beacon for justice, certainly in the world of human rights advocacy. And she's such a humble person. She's a stellar figure in Guatemala, but you wouldn't know it from her manner and her appearance and the way she carries herself.
Speaker 3.
Someone I admire is Cornel West, an American intellectual. He speaks out about all kinds of issues, like civil rights, particularly for African Americans and for the poor. What stands out is his charisma, and that he's an amazing, electrifying speaker. You can see him on YouTube, or acting in 2 of the Matrix films. He's kind of like a crazy preacher, but really funny and sharp. And, okay, he has a PhD from Princeton, but he has a really good grasp of pop culture. And when he speaks, he uses all these academic references, but also references to TV and rap music. Also, he's completely fearless. He criticised President Bush, but also President Obama, and I think he was arrested at one point for civil disobedience in New York. He's just a tower of strength and eloquence.
Unit 4, Recording 5.
So you see that thing on the news about that 70-year-old grandmother who stopped the jewel thieves.
The one, who knocked one of them off their bike,
Yeah.
off a motorbike. That was amazing.
It wasn't extraordinary? And they were robbing this jewel store and smashing the windows.
Yeah, and she
and
just
nobody
came
was doing
up
anything
and
about it.
completely hit them straight over the head with a massive great handbag.
With a shopping
bag or something.
full of, I don't know, beans or something.
Cans of
hopefully.
beans. Yeah.
But, I mean, would you do that in that situation?
I, if it was up to me, I think I would probably be too cowardly and I'd end up just calling the police, I'm afraid
No,
to
it's
say.
interesting, isn't it? I mean, you know, if I ever found myself in that situation, I would like to think that I would be, a have-a-go hero as well. But push come to shove, whether or not you actually do it or not is another question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
the fact is that it's dangerous.
how many were there? 6 of them she took on?
Something like that, yeah.
That really is.
And she knocked one of them off the scooter. It was only then that all the other passers-by came and,
jumped
landed
on the bandwagon.
him. Yeah.
Yes.
But she'd done the whole thing.
No, you have to. I completely take my hat off to her for that, because that is truly heroic to just charge in there. But no way would I do that. I just can't see. I own up to cowardice. I would be ringing someone.
Well, a friend of mine said that he thought it was absolutely completely stupid, totally wrong thing to do. I said no. I thought that if more people, were like that, you'd have a better society.
Yeah. The thing is, as you said before, I don't know. I think it has to be one of those instantaneous reactions. You either don't think about the consequences and you pile in and you do what you can, or as soon as you hesitate, I think you're lost.
Yeah.
Really. And
I think, to be absolutely honest, that if it was up to me in the same situation, I'd probably leg it.
Really? Yes. I think I'd probably do my bit by calling the police.
Unit 4, Recording 6.
It was totally wrong. To be absolutely honest, it was completely stupid. What you have to remember is, the fact is, the thing is, that's out of the question. No chance. Not on your life.
Unit 4, Recording 7.
So, what do you think? How are they caught?
Well, it's usually some detail in the artwork, isn't it? Like the forger uses the wrong kind of paint, or the canvas is made of the wrong type of material, or something like that. It's usually human error, isn't it?
I think so. And in this case, it was human error, but not quite what you're saying.
Could it be something to do with the family? It's quite unusual to have a whole family involved. I think art forgers are usually lone wolves, aren't they? Maybe it was the elderly parents. Maybe they let something slip. Or perhaps they said something that gave the game away somehow.
Nope. Good guess, though. The mistake was made by the forger, Sean. And it wasn't a painting, it was an Assyrian relief. Kind of like a flat sculpture from 600 BC.
600 BC? Oh, so maybe he used the wrong type of stone or plaster. Or could it be that the design didn't match up to designs from 600 BC? Maybe it was too modern?
You're on the right track. The relief included horses and the horses' reins. The ones in the forgery were apparently inconsistent with other reliefs of that period. But also, you'll like this, there was a spelling mistake on the inscription.
No way!
This mistake was considered very unlikely on a piece that was supposedly made for a king. And then George panicked.
George is the father who sold the art, right?
Yes. George panicked and said he'd sell the piece for a very low price.
Aha, so it's connected to the elderly parents too.
Yeah, it all seemed too suspicious, so the police got involved, and 18 months later, they arrested the whole family.
Wow, that's some story.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that the family didn't seem to do it for the money. They lived in a small, messy house, and Sean made all his forgeries in the garden shed. Anyway, in the end, Sean was sentenced to 4 years in jail, and the family had to pay back £400,000. The parents were spared prison sentences because of their age.
Unit 5, Secrets. Recording 1.
Now, if I'd ever told anybody how much my dad earned, he'd have been absolutely furious. I'm not sure that I ever really knew. We were raised in an atmosphere where families kept themselves to themselves, and you told nobody your business. And then it all changed as we became more knowledgeable about the kind of dangerous secrets that might be held behind closed doors and the damage they could do. We were encouraged as a society to tell these tales and let it all hang out. So can we still keep a secret?
One of my friends told me to keep a secret about how she was going out with this other girl's boyfriend, and I kind of went up to the girl and told her. By accident, it just fell out. She got really, really annoyed, and it was horrible. It was like I thought she was actually going to slap me. It was so bad. Oh my God. We made up like 2 hours later, but it was just the initial, I should never have told her secret though, so it was my fault.
Have you ever given away anyone's secret by accident? Probably just Christmas presents, maybe accidentally telling someone what their Christmas present was. My husband nearly did that yesterday, actually. He took an afternoon off work to go and get something for Christmas for me. Wouldn't tell me for days where he was going and almost let it slip where he was. I really wish he had given it away.
What's the hardest secret that you've ever had to keep? I revealed a secret of a romance that I had with an older man that I revealed to my husband because I decided that I had to tell him because I couldn't live with this secret. If I had to live in honesty with my husband, I had to reveal to him the secret and face the consequences. And as you can see, this is the consequence. We've grown closer together as a result of that.
So the consequences were quite good then, it seems.
There you are. Here he is at my side and I'm at his side. So that was the very big secret that I kept, but I did reveal it.
Ailish Kavanagh talking to people in Croydon. So when do you spill the beans and be honest, and when is it better to stay stum? Eva Rice is the author of a novel called The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret. Do you really think we have lost the art of keeping a secret?
I certainly do. I think that nowadays everyone's so encouraged to say everything at all times and express the way they feel at the drop of a hat. And I think that the point of my book was to get across the fact that sometimes keeping a secret isn't always a bad thing. It can be something that can bring a more positive outcome than always telling everyone how you feel.
So what kind of secret would you keep?
I think like the characters in my book, if you're keeping a secret that is in some way going to protect somebody from something, obviously I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but if you're protecting somebody in a way that isn't going to damage them when they do ultimately find out, I think that in that case the secret's a very good thing to keep. But nowadays it's something that's frowned upon and something that's considered wrong, and you're supposed to tell everyone the way you feel 24 hours a day, and so it's something that you shouldn't do, keep a secret.
Unit 5. Recording 2. Listen to the recording again and answer the questions. Part 1.
Now, if I'd ever told anybody how much my dad earned, he'd have been absolutely furious. I'm not sure that I ever really knew. We were raised in an atmosphere where families kept themselves to themselves, and you told nobody your business. And then it all changed as we became more knowledgeable about the kind of dangerous secrets that might be held behind closed doors and the damage they could do. We were encouraged as a society to tell these tales and let it all hang out. So can we still keep a secret?
Question 1. What would have made the presenter's father furious? Part 2.
One of my friends told me to keep a secret about how she was going out with this other girl's boyfriend, and I kind of went up to the girl and told her. By accident, it just fell out. She got really, really annoyed, and it was horrible. It was like I thought she was actually going to slap me. It was so bad. Oh my God. We made up like 2 hours later, but it was just the initial, I should never have told her secret though, so it was my fault.
Question 2. A girl revealed her friend's secret. Was she forgiven? Part 3.
Have you ever given away anyone's secret by accident? Probably just Christmas presents, maybe accidentally telling someone what their Christmas present was. My husband nearly did that yesterday, actually. He took an afternoon off work to go go and get something for Christmas for me. Wouldn't tell me for days where he was going, and almost let it slip where he was. I really wish he had given it away.
Question 3. What secret did the wife want to know from her husband? Part 4.
What's the hardest secret that you've ever had to keep?
I revealed a secret of a romance that I had with an older man that I revealed to my husband because I decided that I had to tell him because I couldn't live with this secret. If I had to live in honesty with my husband, I had to reveal to him the secret and face the consequences. And as you can see, this is the consequence. We've grown closer together as a result of that.
So the consequences were quite good then, it seems.
There you are. Here he is at my side and I'm at his side. So that was the very big secret that I kept, but I did reveal it.
Question 4. Is the woman who had another relationship still married? Part 5.
Ailish Kavanagh talking to people in Croydon. So, when do you spill the beans and be honest? And when is it better to stay stum? Eva Rice is the author of a novel called The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret. Do you really think we have lost the art of keeping a secret?
I certainly do. I think that nowadays everyone's so encouraged to say everything at all times and express the way they feel at the drop of a hat. And I think that the point of my book was to get across the fact that sometimes keeping a secret isn't always a bad thing. It can be something that can bring a more positive outcome than always telling everyone how you feel.
So what kind of secret would you keep?
I think, well, like the characters in my book, if you're keeping a secret that is in some way going to protect somebody from something, obviously I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but if you're protecting somebody in a way that isn't going to damage them when they do ultimately find out, I think that in that case the secret's a very good thing to keep. But nowadays it's something that's frowned upon and something that's considered wrong, and you're supposed to tell everyone the way you feel 24 hours a day, and so it's something that you shouldn't do, keep a secret.
Question 5. What kind of secret would the author keep? Unit 5. Recording 3.
1A. Dictionary.
Dictionaries are allowed in the exam.
1B. Obligatory.
It's obligatory for companies to provide details of their industrial processes.
2A. Compelled to.
She felt compelled to resign because of the scandal.
2B. Dared to.
Only a few journalists dared to cover the story.
3A. Tell him what had happened.
At least she had the courage to tell him what had happened.
3B. Cars have been banned.
Cars have been banned from the city centre.
Unit 5. Recording 4.
1A.
Dictionaries are allowed in the exam.
1B.
It's obligatory for companies to provide details of their industrial processes.
2A.
She felt compelled to resign because of the scandal.
2B.
Only a few journalists dared to cover the story.
3A.
At least she had the courage to tell him what had happened.
3B.
Cars have been banned from the city centre.
Unit 5. Recording 5. 1.
The government cracked down on illegal immigration because the situation couldn't go on.
2.
I bought some new curtains for my bedroom to jazz it up.
3.
We mulled over the candidates and narrowed them down to a short list of 3.
4.
I've thought it over and I'm not going to accept the job.
5.
I don't think the weather's going to brighten up before the match starts. Perhaps we should call it off.
Unit 5. Recording 6.
What do you think about organisations like WikiLeaks?
Well, to be honest, I think they should be stopped. And the reason why I say that is because they are responsible for leaking all kinds of confidential information, some of which is highly sensitive information, about people who work in government or military strategy, and they release this kind of information in a way which is, quite honestly, completely reckless. They seem to have no regard for the ethics of what they're doing, and I think they should be stopped. They've exposed people who they say are informants, and now the lives of those people and their families are now in danger.
Hold on a minute. Can you be sure about that? Is there any evidence to prove that?
Well, no, probably not. Not absolute proof, but that's not the point. The only way to prove it'll be if something terrible happens to those people as a result of the information which has been disclosed. The point is that governments and, certain organisations simply have to be able to keep some information private. It doesn't make sense for everybody to have access to all the information that they want. Let me put it this way. It's like saying you need to give everybody your bank details because we all have the right to know, but you don't. You don't have the right. And it's simply ridiculous to think that you do. If you think about it, it's just irresponsible and it's dangerous.
I don't see how you can say that. Don't you think that there are cases when it's right for the public to know what's happening? Mark, where do you stand on this?
Well, yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's not something I've thought much about before, but in fact I think that WikiLeaks is one of the best things to happen in the last few years. It's opened up access to information, and it means that big companies and governments will need to be much more careful about how they deal with things in the future, because they can no longer hide behind secrets. And that's how it should be. After all, if you think about it, you can't give people the protection to do whatever they want without fear of being discovered. Whether it's companies using spies to find out what rival companies are planning, or governments holding people illegally, or using illegal practices to get information. I think freedom of information can only be a good thing, and it's like a wake-up call to all those who previously thought that they could get away with wrongdoing by just keeping it quiet. That just doesn't work anymore.
But that doesn't take account of the fact that some information, like military information, is highly sensitive and shouldn't be allowed to spread around the internet where simply anybody can get hold of it and use it for whatever purposes they wish.
I think you'll find that actually information has always been leaked. It's just the medium that has changed now, so that with the internet it's that bit easier. But there have always been whistleblowers, and there will continue to be. It's no different. The point I'm trying to make is that if the chances of you being discovered are increased, the likelihood of you being exposed, then it'll make you think twice about the actions you're taking, whether you're in government or in a big corporation. I think you'll find that people will be more careful in the future, and in my opinion, that can only be a good thing.
Unit 5. Recording 7. 1.
Where do you stand on this?
2.
Where do you stand on this?
3.
Hold on a minute. I wanted to say that we should be careful.
4.
Hold on a minute. I wanted to say that we should be careful.
5.
It's not something I've thought much about before.
6.
It's not something I've thought much about before.
7.
I'm not sure what that's got to do with the issue.
8.
I'm not sure what that's got to do with the issue.
5. Recording 8.
OK, so I'm going to tell you about some secret places to go in my city. Well, I live in Edinburgh, and the first place I'm going to talk about is I think the Japanese Kyoto Friendship Gardens. If you look around the grounds of the Lauriston Castle in Cramond, which is a lovely castle, then secluded away you'll find the Japanese Gardens. They were opened to celebrate the twinning of Edinburgh with Kyoto, and they are just a wonderful place to sit and relax, look at the blossom on the trees, and enjoy the serenity of the place. It's very, very zen, and you would never believe it's there. Next, this is a place you could easily walk past unless you knew about it. Most people have never heard about it. It's number 2 Wellington Place in Leith. It's just a normal-looking Edinburgh door. There's no plaque outside or anything like that. But the Scottish author Irvine Welsh wrote his debut novel, Trainspotting, in the top-floor apartment of this house. So that's a secret I always point out to people when we walk past. Insider information. Next, I think I should tell you about the rooftop terrace on top of the National Museum of Scotland. It's not what you'd call a big secret, but this place is really hidden away and can seem quite difficult to get to. But it's so worth it when you get there because you can get these fantastic views of the city and the castle. Oh, it's brilliant, especially on a clear day. And there's a really nice cafe up there too.